This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting of the Village of Ashwaubenon Finance and Personnel Committee, Tuesday, September 20th, 2022. Roll call, please.
Tracy Fluke. Here. Tom Selk.
Here.
Allison Brunette. Here. Chris Serbel.
Here.
Kelly Services excused.
Okay, please stand for national anthem. Pledge of Allegiance.
Are you singing?
Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please keep in mind all of our brave men and women serving to protect us. Action on the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Action on the minutes, Finance and Personnel Committee, August 16, 2022.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Comments from the public must be limited to items not on the agenda, must state name and address, limited to 5 minutes. Board's role is to listen and not discuss the item. Personal issues cannot be discussed. No individuals named. Board is not able to take action at the meeting. We've got nobody in the audience. Anybody on the interweb? There, nobody. We will move on. Action items. Village Board Chambers audio vision system. I think Jeremy is going to present us. New microphones on this?
Sounds like we need a new AV system.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
Oh, now there is.
That's the way they were, so you're right. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
And hold your tongue, I guess.
Test. Okay. Now I think everyone can hear us. There we go. So before you, we've got a proposal for a upgrade to our audiovisual equipment here in the Village Boardroom. I guess I'll kind of ask any questions if you guys have, or answer any questions if you guys have, but basically it's completely, anything that's audiovisual will be basically replaced. We have a new projector, new cameras, the video production equipment in the back room would get replaced. New Crestrons that control the equipment. We'll actually have an assisted listening system added to the room, in addition to some monitors up on the dais for trustees and board members. But it was something that we've been looking at for a couple of years now. It was earmarked as ARPA funding, I believe, last year. So it wouldn't be affecting the general budget, but we did get 3 proposals from 3 different companies: Camera Corner, Northern Sound and Video, and CEC. And we are proposing that we would approve the bid from the quote from Camera Corner. But I'll answer any questions that you guys have.
Jeremy, I noticed on the Camera Corner one, there's an alternate for the LCD projector, and we are not taking that. Though it's not the bids, or what's the difference between the two, I guess, and which one do you want to go?
That was just an upgrade if we wanted to make an upgrade. The one, I'm trying to remember how many lumens that one is, maybe 6,000, and the one that's in the quote is 8,000, so we're already going up lumens on that one. It's going to be bulbless, so it's just going to be a laser projector, so we don't have to replace the bulb, but that projector, I think the bulb lasted 10, 15 years. So we've only replaced it once since I've been here. So we're already moving to an upgraded projector already, but they give us another option. Hey, if money wasn't an option, here's another option. You could upgrade that projector to another step up. But we just didn't feel that we needed to go that high end at this point, so.
Okay, thank you.
Couple key items that I'll just kind of mention because there's a lot of detail and technical specification within the proposals, but we've made some kind of logistical changes to audio or visual components to the board. So obviously projector and screen, the way it's currently set up would be similar. Correct me if I'm wrong, the large TV display that is here, that would essentially go away. And then the board would have shared monitors between each of the committee member or trustee seats that could then be used to display the same imagery that's being presented on the projector. So I know sometimes it can be rather difficult to see in detail the projector screen from the dais, especially when we have individuals from the public here and we have a full room. It can be difficult just to kind of oversee over people's heads. So we will have kind of portable, if you will, monitors between each of the seats that the trustee or committee members can share. We will have continued, we're not having wireless mics per se, but mics with goosenecks at the trustee or committee member seats with the intent that they will be live so that we can ensure that we're picking up audio from the trustees. We found that if we kind of disable the mics or mute them, trustees or committee members tend to forget to hit their mics so that we can't hear them. And then clearly, if you've not been back to our 1950s version of TV production in the back room, that entire system gets replaced with the digital system, which should make it much more easier and more efficient to produce imagery within the meeting as well.
Is it, you're going to get a relief on the maintenance at all, or is it, because right now Camera Corner is doing a maintenance, I'm assuming you pay them a fee. Is it similar fee with the new equipment or less or what?
Currently, we're not paying a yearly maintenance on this room right now, but we would look at doing maybe a maintenance agreement with the new system that would come in. We can set it up as a 5-year and get billed each year for that, but that would be something that we would basically put into our not our software maintenance, but supplies account out of the IT budget. Or contracted services probably would be a better fit for that one, but that was the proposal, is that besides this, we would go into a maintenance agreement. A lot of the equipment is usually covered for a year or 3 years, but then with a 5-year, we can basically, if those equipment fails, we'll literally replace that for us at no charge. So they'll come in, they'll do all the firmware updates, make sure everything is up to snuff, and gives us an extra coverage in case the equipment goes after that. And then we can always renew that 5-year agreement either year by year or how many years we want after that. So, but there's nothing, no maintenance agreement currently on that system, and that's where we're kind of running into issues with the Crestron and some of the video production stuff. They don't make parts for that anymore. So we're kind of at the mercy of eBay to try to find replacement parts that are out used and things like that. So something else that Joel didn't touch on too is we're going to add some wireless sharing capabilities in here. We do have them in all of our conference rooms as well, but that'll be helpful for the when municipal court is in here and the different attorneys want to be able to present things on the screen. Right now, they've got to basically use the computer up front, or I think there's a VGA cable on the other side. But we'll be able to have wireless presentations in here, similar to how it is now with the GoToMeeting, but a little bit more if you're doing trainings and things like that in this room. So this room gets used quite a bit other than village board meetings. It's also, training, municipal court, quite a few different things. So we want to make sure that we're flexible enough to capable to provide those items.
Jeremy, is there, other than the 17-inch viewing monitors, is there anything that's new that's not being replaced, but that's new that's being added?
Basically, everything is pretty much being replaced. The only thing would be the ceiling speakers. We're just going to keep those. You'll have new wiring that goes to each one.
But I mean, new like the 17-inch monitors, if I'm understanding right, they're going to be placed up here.
Correct.
We don't have now.
Correct.
Is that the only thing that's really being added?
We've got the share link. We're going to have a bunch of, instead of having wired mics up at the tables, we'll have 4 wireless mics. So now when municipal court is here, they'll have 2 mics on each table and not have to worry about all the wires and everyone tripping and having this carpet that's over there now. New Crestron on the front, as well as there'll be a Crestron back by the video production equipment. So that they can control the meet in case like we had today where the wireless mics were muted. They could actually just hit that button back there. But I think that covers most of that. The listing system too as well. We don't really have anything for ADA right now in this room. So the FM Wi-Fi listing system would be also new.
Right. And then, just so I understand this right, so the bid is at 95.6, and then there's exclusions. Following work is not included, and that's on page 7. There's a list of things on there. So how is that budgeted in? Or where does those things fit in this?
We don't really anticipate any saw cutting or core drilling. Most of all the wires are going to be run through, we have existing channels already run through there, so we really don't assume that we're going to have any patching or mill work or trim. I think that's just kind of a standard message that they put in there.
Right. Okay.
I suppose if something happens, we'd have to go back to finance and maybe building replacement or something like that, or building repairs, but yeah. The last time that was in here, they actually did some saw cutting in the floor and things like that, but we already have the channels and everything run. So most of the cables are all running in the ceiling. They're existing spots, so like the cameras will probably be in the same spot, so we already have wires and channels there. Mics and stuff, everything is already wired there, so we're just reusing those channels of those paths.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Is that ADA enhancement of a hearing loop so that people with hearing devices can turn to that channel and hear?
So it's not a hearing loop. It's similar to the ones that we have at the community center. We did get quotes for the hearing loop. I think that was right around 15,000, if I remember correctly. No, about 12,000 if we wanted to do the hearing loop. Well, this is a little bit more of 4,000 to do that. So that's just basically you're going to have the kind of like a wireless or a headphone gear that you would just wear around your neck. And then they would just tune into it. So they would have to check it out and basically then check it back in when they're done. Like I said, we have a couple of those at the community center. I don't remember if the PAC has a hearing loop or if they have a...
Yes, they do.
They have a hearing loop, okay. So that's another option that we can look at. And we did, like I said, we got some price quotes on that, and it was about 12,000 if we did that. So probably looking at another 8,000 if you minus the 4,000 from the camera corner quote if we want to do that. But that would be a separate company that would come in. They would actually pull the carpet tiles. They wouldn't have to drill or anything like that. Pull the carpet tiles, and they put this thin little metal piece. I think I might still have a copy of that back there. And they would run it all the way through the room and then tie into our system. But that's certainly an option. That's the more coverage, but it's just a matter of if it's something you guys want to go with. So.
I guess really the only reason I wanted to clarify is I think this is a really good thing because, as you can tell with this huge audience here tonight, we typically don't have a lot of in-person attendance, but Haley is doing such a fabulous job of promoting the meeting links if folks want to join through GoToMeeting or stream the meetings at a later date. So anything we can do to enhance the user experience in person or online, I think is a really great step for our residents if they choose to engage, to just stay abreast of what's happening in these meetings, whether they're here in real time or not.
Am I correct in just assuming both bids are around, let's say, $100,000 and one was like $200,000? Any thoughts on why that is?
Not much. I mean, I have a little bit of thought, but I mean, some of it is each company kind of has their own unique equipment that they use. I know that with CEC, they really don't have too many techs in the Green Bay area. A lot of them come out of Madison and Milwaukee. So the install charge is going to be quite a bit higher because they're going to be bringing crews in from another part of the state. I believe also there was some maintenance and stuff that was included in that plan, if I remember correctly. So those are kind of these are the kind of big three players that we've dealt with in the past and had good relationships with. Camera Corner has done a lot of equipment for us in our community center, our village hall. So they're very familiar with our equipment, and they have a really good service. We have no issues with them. So.
Okay, anybody else, questions? All right. We'll entertain a motion if anybody,
I move that we go forward with the proposal from Camera Corner.
A second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Nobody, motion passes. All right, let's see, action items B, employee position descriptions and compensation plan update. Joel?
Okay, this particular item is really predominantly for discussion and feedback to staff. No formal action is necessary tonight, as we were just providing an update to the committee as to our progress from our last conversation last month. As you recall, last month we talked about putting together a more formal position compensation wage and salary matrix. Based on that conversation last month, staff has begun the process of updating position descriptions and then beginning to preliminarily inputting those different positions into the matrix represented based on the conversation that we had last month. Now, I will note that the position descriptions that were included in your packet are purely draft at this point in time, and they are not all-inclusive to all positions that will eventually make its way to you at committee level for approval and recommendation to the village board. So we do have a few additional position descriptions that we need to complete, to correct, and to eventually forward to the committee. We do plan and anticipate to do that at your meeting in October, with possible consideration by the board in October as well. And tied to that process and that effort is the wage and salary matrix. So when we begin putting positions into the wage and salary matrix, we do so with an objective frame of mind. We're not focused on the individuals holding that position, but the position itself and how it rates out and scores out based on the requirements of the position, whether it's education, experience, knowledge, supervision, whether that's received or exercised, consequences of decisions, job complexity, things of those natures as you see on the matrix. So in your packet, you are included several position descriptions that we have begun working through. And then from there, just to kind of give you a flavor of what the look, feel, and context of those position descriptions are, and so that you could then create a comparative reference back to the wage and salary matrix, so it kind of starts to somewhat make some sense and some clarity. Again, as we discussed at the last meeting, our wage and salary matrix is made up of 15 grades. Each grade has an internal range of points. Those points are tallied based on the 8 grading criterias and the weighted factor of each of those criterias. Each grade is then given 15 steps. Steps 1 through 6 are essentially that hiring range. We're not quite to midpoint yet, but once you get past step 6, you're getting closer to that midpoint, and then that final wage is step 15, or the maximum for that particular position. Each wage for each grade, I should say each step for each grade, is 2% over the prior step. So there's a 2% lift to each salary or wage from step to step. So there's a 2% lift for each period. When updates to the salary and wage matrix are made, they are made to the base wage, or the minimum or step 1 wage. So if the village were to elect to increase wages by 3%, that 3% is applied to the base wage, and then every wage after that is updated reflective of that 2% lift, step over step. The salary is converted into an hourly wage to coincide with that salary for that step. That hourly wage is based on the salary divided by the traditional 40-hour work week, so 2,080 hours. And I point that out because we have positions here that are considered full-time, but they work 37 and a half hours. They'll still get the hourly wage based on the matrix, regardless of whether they're a 40-hour-a-week employee or a 37 and a half hour employee. For salaried positions, they are exempt, and so they are paid the salary given the corresponding grade, regardless of whether they work 37 and a half hours or 40 hours per week. And so within the packet, you are also included the position analysis matrix. Again, this does not include all positions. There are several positions that are not included yet because we, again, are working through those position descriptions. As an example, in your packet, the GIS coordinator was not included. Public safety records and administrative support staff in public safety are not included. They would be eventually shown here. Just to give you an example, our position village forester as an example, this position is ranked here under job knowledge, experience, job complexity. They're given different points, and those points are based on a matrix of different criteria. So our village forester, if we look at that analysis, it's scored as a 5 for knowledge and education. When we look at the scoring sheet, a 5 would mean that that position requires some type of bachelor degree. So Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science, they get 5 points. Those 5 points are multiplied by the weight factor. So under knowledge and education, that is a 20. So 5 times 20, you get 100 points, and that goes into that score. For the village forester, if you look at experience based on the position analysis, it requires 3. So that means that this individual is hired on should have at least 2 to 5 years of experience in forestry. So then they get 3 points, 3 times 20, 60 points, so on and so forth. You get the idea behind it. When we get into other factors like job complexity and consequences of decisions, they can be somewhat subjective, of course, and as much as we want to make this as a wholly objective frame of mind, there is some subjectivity to it. A village forester is probably going to tell you they have the most complex job in the world because they have to make certain cuts at certain times and at certain angles, and that complexity is such, and that the consequences of their decisions is going to be life or death, right? If they cut the tree wrong or prune the tree incorrectly, there's a risk somebody could be walking underneath that tree, and all of a sudden now individuals have perished as a result of their negligence. Okay, we recognize that everybody feels that their job is vitally important, and we understand that, but in the scope of our operations and the impact that the services that that position provides is the basis for how we evaluate the complexity and the consequence as a result of that position. So again, if you look at complexity, what we're looking at are a variety of different factors. So as an example, if an employee is scored at a 4 for job complexity, it means their position has kind of a medium scope, meaning they're somewhat limited, but they might have a little bit broader range than just one facet of operations. It could be somewhat complex. So maybe as a village forester, they have a medium scope because they're dealing with a variety of different horticultural needs, and so the scope is somewhat medium. It can be somewhat complex or technical, and we would agree that that's the case. Given the fact that the position does require a bachelor's degree, there's some technical component to it, but yet the position is somewhat routine, right? A village forester, every day is a little different, but at the end of the day, it's a boar culture, and that's what they're dealing with, right? So it's somewhat routine from that standpoint, and so you get a score of a 4. If you look at consequences for decisions, kind of the same thing. So if an employee was scored a 4 there, the consequence of their decision, and we always take worst case scenario. So if they make a terribly wrong decision, what impact will that have to the community or to the organization? So in this particular example, if an individual scores a 4 or position scores a 4, their consequence for making that bad decision is somewhat broad. It could be detrimental to the organization or the community. It might have a medium impact to the overall, again, community or organization. And then the check mark is what kind of check do they have from some type of supervisory role? So in this example, somewhat broad, medium impact is a pretty serious consequence, but as a result of their position, they have a high check from a supervisor, meaning every time they do something, it's generally checked by somebody else before it is fully signed off on, right? So yeah, the consequences can be dire, but there's always somebody else there to check it off to make sure it's done accurately, okay? As you move up in those scores, you start to broaden the scope, you broaden the impact, and you reduce the amount of checks in place to that employee in their decision making. The other thing I'll kind of mention is the work environment. Obviously, office employees, the demands on their work can be rather limited. I joke around, people running with scissors through the office is a bad thing, but generally speaking, we don't have too many office employees that are doing that, so the risk associated with office work is less than those working in the field, let's say in public safety or public works for that matter. And so they have a lower score because their work environment is less risky. Employees that work in adverse weather conditions or have a higher degree of physicality to their work environment is more risky, and so they get an increased score as a result of that. So at the end, again, each position is scored based on each of those criteria. Each criteria is weighted, and at the end, the individual position is giving a final internal point score that then corresponds to the grade, and so that grade is then assigned to that particular position. There is one category here that I did not address tonight, is the market adjustments. So there will be times periodically where a particular position is no longer competitive within the range based on the weighted factors that we use to score out that position. And as a result of that, a market adjustment may be necessary in order to lift that position to a higher wage grade to be more competitive with the marketplace. We, meaning HR and I, we would think that if you have periodic market adjustments for that purpose, that's okay. But if you start to get to where your workforce is being market adjusted, so let's say 10% of your workforce or better is being adjusted for market conditions, you really need to review and do a full salary study then at that point. So it can happen periodically, but if you start to see an overwhelming number of your positions where that is the case, it's likely the result of us not maintaining our wage matrix to reflect inflationary pressures on it. The exception to that would be where we have certain adjustments being made based on the nature of the position. So if you look at the matrix, we have a few situations where we might have a Parks Laborer 1 or a Parks Laborer 2 position. And those are created to provide some discrepancy and some growth opportunities for employees that may be in those similar but maybe expanded roles. So as an example, Park Laborer 1 may have 1 to 2 years of experience. Park Laborer 2 might have 5 or more years of experience with maybe a progressive promotion in that. There may be additional duties assigned to a Park Laborer 2 versus a Park Laborer 1. Or you simply have an employee that has been with you for 15 years and they continue to do exemplary work, and because of their experience and tenure, you want to provide an opportunity for future wage growth, and so you create those tiered positions. And so at times you may see market adjustments to reflect that. So we've given some additional points to these positions that have a 1 or 2 scale to, again, give it a lift in grades so that those employees have an opportunity for wage growth. In addition to that, one of the questions that came up in reviewing this with our department heads is, so let's say you have, oftentimes we have employees in particular, let's say Public Works or Parks line staff. And some of them have, let's say, skilled capabilities. So maybe they have plumbing or electrical or heavy equipment operation. Under our current compensation program, everyone is getting basically paid the same wage. So you're a laborer or you're a laborer two, that's your wage. Now, certain people within that wage may be afforded the opportunity to operate heavy equipment or do more skilled labor, but they're still getting paid the same wage. What this allows us to do is when we see that, recognize that we have a greater skill set maybe with individuals, and we can create positions to reflect that skill set, and then score them based on that skill and create that position and create that wage growth for that individual so that it more aligns with their skill set. So it's scalable that way as well. Couple other key factors that I'll kind of mention is, and I think I mentioned this last month as well. So again, the matrix carries you through 15 steps. So if an employee starts at the minimum level, it would take effectively 15 years to get to that final max step. Now, we do know that that's probably not the reality. What the reality is that employees may be hired anywhere within that range of steps 1 through 6. So it could be anywhere from 15 to, let's say, 10 years before they hit their max. Once they hit their max on the matrix, unless they are moved and advanced to a higher grade level position, they're effectively redlined, meaning that that's the max step increase that they can achieve, and that any wage increases after that are going to be subject primarily to cost of inflation increases that the board would adopt year over year or from time to time. So generally the board has been fairly willing to add CPI increases to wages. So year over year as we evaluate that, that would affect the matrix, and so those employees that are technically redlined on the matrix still have an opportunity for wage growth based on CPI. The other thing I'll mention is process. So as we've talked about, that we do not currently have a formal wage structure or program. In order to implement this, what I would propose is that we would introduce our employees into the next logical step on the matrix in comparison to their current wage. So as an example, if we have a Public Works laborer position, so if let's just pick on our Parks laborer 2 position. So that is a grade 5, okay? So if we look at our grade 5 and we move to our hourly rate, let's say our current employee is making $29.71 an hour. So the next logical step for that employee would be $30.05. So to get them into the matrix, they would be essentially assigned step 11. So they would get a little less than a 2% increase as a result of us putting them into the matrix. And then the recommendation from staff, and as we will begin to finalize and present our budget, will be based on the concept that these employees, as of January 1, then would be able to advance to that next step in accordance to policy. So as of January 1, 2023, if this is a program that's approved and moves forward, that employee would then move to step 12, and they would get an additional 2% bump. What that effectively equates to is, a little less than a 4% increase from the prior year for that employee to get them into the matrix. That's assuming that there are no adjustments to the matrix to reflect CPI. If the board does elect to increase the proposed matrix going into next year, that would also lift that wage. So that's how that would be effectively implemented, is put the employee into the next logical step and then allow for that step increase as of January 1. So that's really kind of it in a nutshell. At this point, again, we wanted to present kind of where we're at. Next month, what we plan to do is present to committee and board the final position descriptions with a final draft wage matrix that reflects that. To give you a little bit further background information on the position descriptions, department heads have been given draft position descriptions based on prior position descriptions that were created for each job. Those department heads are reviewing those position descriptions, or should be, with their staff to verify and validate that they are accurate and reflective of the positions, to which point they'll resubmit to HR and I, and then we'll sanitize the documents and then ultimately get those back to committee and board. So our department heads, our staff should be engaged in this process, and it is not being completed wholly in a vacuum by either HR or the village manager's office. It's a pretty inclusive and collaborative approach to trying to make sure that these position descriptions are reflective of the requirements of the job and the duties that are essential. So with that, I'll answer any questions you have and take feedback from the committee as we continue to move forward.
That's a lot of info and detail. Appreciate the work. Holy cow, that's.
So for
I assume part of the, go ahead. As part of the process will, you indicated that somebody might be going up a step. Maybe somebody will be going down a step in salary, or is that not a possibility? And the next, I guess my real question is, after you get this, are you going to slot the employees before you go to the board and say, this is how we'd like to slot them, for lack of a better term, and the current salaries are this is the change that is going to happen, correct?
Yeah, so I'll try to attempt to answer the questions and address any of the feedback. So the first one is, no, employees would not be taking, as a result of this, regardless of the outcome of the scoring, employees would not be taking a salary or wage hit as a result of that. Interestingly, based on the position descriptions that we've drafted so far and have scored, the positions, I went through and I looked at every individual that is in those positions to see if their current wage fits within the grade that this scoring sets them, and they do. So there is opportunity. Yep. So that's good. So that's reflective, showing that, okay, we're kind of aligning with that. Now with that, there have been a couple of positions, however, where we have an employee, let's say that is a long tenured employee, based on their current wage, they fit within the grade, but let's say they've been here 20 plus years and they're at only step 2 of the grade. Really, ultimately, that employee should get a larger bump to be reflective of their tenure. And so there will be a few of those recommendations where those employees, their wages aren't necessarily matching their tenure and their position, and so they should get an increase that may be larger than others for just entering into the matrix.
Great, thank you.
So you may have an employee that has been here multiple years, and they may actually take a bunch of steps up so that their wages is set up the way it should be, is what you're saying with that.
Yeah, I know there's at least one for sure that they are at their, let's say, minimum or step 2 or step 3, but they've been here for 20 plus years. They probably should be advanced to reflect that. Yep.
I just had some on the position descriptions, but they're more like typos or oddball things that I caught in there. So it sounds like you're still working on those. So I will just send those to you if you would like me to.
That would be perfect.
But other than that, I really didn't have any comments, and I thought it was well put together, and it's easy to understand. I think that the staff will be able to understand it, and having them go up a little bit, having nobody, lessen their wage, I think is obviously is what you have to do anyway, but will work out well. And if everything's explained to them, I think it'll be a good system, and it'll, just wage increases are always kind of iffy with people, there's all this back and forth. So I think having a system like this that's very clear cut and that they can understand will really take away a lot of that. So.
Anybody else? Questions? No? Thank you, Joel.
Okay, thank you.
There's a lot of work went into this, and I think it's well prepared. It's going to be really nice. When it gets set up, I think it'll be very nice. So
Yeah, and
thank you for your efforts in that. I think
Yeah,
long overdue.
You're welcome, and I apologize I didn't answer one of your questions before as far as how we would communicate this to the group. So I've been working in concert with the department heads, obviously, to update the position descriptions. We've had a number of conversations on this wage and salary matrix already. In addition to that, one of the items that you'll see coming forward here in the not too distant future is a complete update to our employee handbook, of which takes into consideration this concept of the salary and wage matrix. We have had an employee, I guess you'd call it like a shared governance type model, where we have employees throughout the entire organization that have sat on this employee handbook review committee. And so they've been giving feedback along the way for several months. So we've been attempting to try to be as transparent and engaging as we possibly can. With that, once we have this drafted, the plan would be to roll out some general communication to employees, go through committee, go through board, and then once it's complete, then we would have a more formal rollout communication that would kind of describe it. And then we are planning on having a training and a review meeting in November as it relates to our open enrollment period, the employee handbook, and any wage and compensation stuff. So we're doing the best we can in communicating and keeping our employees engaged. I'm sure it will catch a few people off guard that aren't staying focused to that issue, and it is a lot of change, certainly. But I think based on our committee and some of the feedback that we've gotten, it's change that has been long overdue.
Joel, or maybe Greg, or both, once this is all plugged in and rolls, do you anticipate any initial impact to our budget?
Well, right now, the plan is to kind of run budget like we normally would, with our current salaries, with some sort of market adjustment. We could then do the analysis, should this be approved, and figure out what that gap is and put it in the budget as we used to do it more. There's just a line item called wage reserve, and then it would just fall in the budget there, and then we do the work. Because the way this is going to time out, that'd be very challenging to get approval in next month and then run back and try to get all that into the budget by each department. But we would know in total what it would be, and then I can do the work and after the budget's approved from there and reallocate. I don't know exactly what that dollar amount is to put in the reserve to cover. It's going to depend on the wage. It's going to depend on the board's decision on any kind of market adjustments and things like that. But it should be relatively close to what we've put in there today as a starting point. So, yeah, I don't want to throw out a number, but we're not talking six figures or something like that. It's not going to be huge. It would be manageable within the budget.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Nope. Okay. Items for next agenda. Anybody want to see anything?
I had one question, and this does not need to be a formal presentation, just a memo is fine. I'd love to hear from Rex's department about how that wage increase for lifeguarding staff, if it was effective, if they saw retention this year. I know it was something quite stressful for them earlier this season, just to see if we maintained the coverage they'd hoped for.
Okay, good. Yeah, good idea. Yeah.
And you're going to give us another update next month, correct? On this, that's another agenda item.
Okay.
And I can have staff prepare just a quick staff report at a minimum for that request.
Okay. Anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Enjoy yours.